What's up? Gina, thanks so much for asking me. She asked me in a moment of weakness. It's been 6 years since I've been on a stage. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'm gonna say yes. And then every day I was like, for like 3 weeks, I'm like, And then on top of it, I just saw a roach on the wall, so I'm just gonna be preoccupied with the roach because I'm terrified of insects. Even though I'm a top, I am a bottom when it comes to bugs. But maybe all tops are bottoms when it comes to bugs. There's kind of a moment like shrieking happens, I run, the color drains out of my face, whoever's in the area needs to handle it. I feel like it's on me, it's in me, I am it. It's like a Kafka moment where I'm just like, hug. So even though I want to be present with all of you, I am only thinking about that. Actually, maybe I should do this. Just so I have eyes on it the whole time.
Go get that bug.
Please, anyone. Okay, I'm gonna make myself super vulnerable and talk about shit I've never really talked about publicly. So recently I was in a restroom with two guys. I walk in, one of them takes the stall, the other one's at the urinal. The guy at the stall sits down, loudly explodes, like, oh shit, he says. His friend says, nice push, bro. This behavior is a physical manifestation of all of my feelings and long-held assumptions of gross male behavior. A bottom of sorts, if you will. I transitioned is it behind me? You know what? It's just living its life. It's living its life. It's not gonna fly. We're not in the South. It's okay. Wait, no, don't. Oh my God. You guys, Miguel just joined us, fresh off the tour, to chat back up. Thank you, Jay. That's true brotherhood. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking care of me. Okay, so yeah, that's a bottom. Hearing a man explode and then his friend tells him, nice push, bro.
I'm on guard.
Oh, and then he took care. Everyone's taking care of me. This is so nice. Thank you. I transitioned about 20 years ago. This was still the dark ages of the trans male movement. I fumbled my way through to make sense of myself and what to do. I had a few lighthouse people shining the way on the unpaved road to self-actualization. Thank you, Lauren Cameron. Thank you, Max Wolf Valerio, and thank you to Jameson Green. This is a complicated offering to my highest self, a love letter to being a man of trans experience, and a goodbye to outdated modalities and a false sense of community. I've hit a lot of bottoms with men, and somehow always managed to go even lower. For the most part, man-hating has served me well. It masked my resentment around not being born a cis man. It served to connect me more deeply to women. It disguised my feelings of inadequacy as righteousness. It set me apart from cis men for better and worse. It allowed me to smile complacently when my announcement that I would be saving my own life with medical transition was met by my queer friends asking, why would you want to be a man? Men are disgusting. It allowed me to tolerate when gay men asked me, if I'm attracted to you, does that make me straight? And when lesbians asked me, or said, I would never date a man, but I'm mostly attracted to trans men. In 2004, still early in transition, I co-headlined a queer music festival with a highly regarded lesbian musician and performance artist. After my show, she mused to our mutual friend, he's a typical straight guy, rapping about women and taking up space like a man. What business does he have performing at a queer music festival? This quote echoed inside of me and drove me to one of the darkest moments of suicidal ideation in my adult life. I was displaced, both in the world and in my body. A couple of weeks after I returned home from that festival, my depression was louder than it had ever been. My girlfriend at the time and I made our way through the throngs of horrendous, bottleneck trafficked and tourists clamoring to get a glimpse of Lance Armstrong's ride through North Beach in San Francisco. We fought them to get me to General Hospital's Psych ER, only to have an admin nurse recommend that I do something to cheer myself up, like, go watch Lance Armstrong. The irony of that statement cracked me and saved me from acting on anything, but I was still broken, wide open, and full of self-loathing. What had I done? According to the larger sentiment being expressed around me by my fellow queers, it seemed I had traded my righteous identity to become the enemy. My man-hating had early beginnings, strong daddy issues, and enough evidence to hold it up for a lifetime. I read the Scum Manifesto. Anyone else? Okay, Society for Cutting Up Men, for those of you that don't know. I read the Scum Manifesto as a 14-year-old butch, memorizing it, proselytizing at my locker between classes. I truly believed Solanus' theory that men were genetically incomplete women and thus inferior and primitive. I went from being a radical teenage man-hating lesbian slam poet that had so many poems about my dislike for men that my signature piece was called Another Male-Bashing Poem. To reconciling my hate as jealousy and thus beginning my medical transition, to being inducted into the boys club and becoming even more repulsed by men, to finding a balance of days where I only hated men a little, to days when I strongly disliked men, to days off from hating men, back to days of rabid, loud, unabashed hatred of men, to starting a camp for trans men and learning to love myself through their faces and experiences, to getting a job at Grindr and witnessing a whole new level of unchecked white, gay, cis male privilege and a new unmanageable layer of disgust and sadness, to extending my newfound love and compassion for men of trans experience into men's groups and other spaces and bearing witness to their vulnerability and grief and the ability to hold each other in it. The beauty of a bottom is it comes with a deeper level of self-awareness and forgiveness so that we can begin the ascension. Let's not get it twisted. I haven't put down my mantra of I love all women until they give me a reason not to, and I hate all men until they give me a reason to. Not. Tonight. It's lifelong, it's hard. But my decision is still to set this aside is still in its infancy. Creating this camp has saved some guys' lives, and for me it turned the lights on and gave me the truest desire to heal. This space is the first place that I've authentically been able to connect fully and fearlessly with my love of being a man. It's gave me a new awareness, enabling me to see how this disdain blocked my ability to completely love myself and allow me to keep myself separate from other men. All these years, I had seen part of myself as toxic, questioning whether or not my identity was an unrighteous decision, as if anyone chooses their gender. When the larger community asks that trans men's voices take a back seat to all other queer voices, we potentially silence the ability to hear from men who have thought long and hard about how to be better men. We forget that trans men's voices are not heard or represented in mainstream culture. We forget where trans men come from. We disregard that trans men struggle differently with the burden of masculinity and maleness, that they have not embodied a lifetime of unchecked male privilege. After 2 decades of hearing this request of smallness come in different incarnations and incantations from the larger LGBT community, I'm now ready to hear it and own my maleness. I'm ready to find love for masculinity and its imperfections through this pivotal moment of change. I'm ready to begin to forgive men. I'm ready to take my voice, my power, my privilege, and share it with cis men, and ask that my trans brothers join me in the larger space of men, to take our voices, our experiences, our hard-won masculinity, our 360-degree view of intersectional and intentional maleness, and share it within the world of men. I'm not saying that they need to disclose their trans history or other ourselves. I'm just saying let's lead the cultural shift that's so desperately needed. Let's use our specific access to understanding and our ability to hold space for emotionality. Trans men are men, and our voices are needed in this movement and in this moment. All of these years of damaging beliefs I've held about men being toxic have corroded my sense of self. I'm still skimming the bottom, but I can see a beam of light. I'm reshaping my feelings and opinions about men, considering the landscape of language we've chosen to inform this seedling of change. Though some people can be toxic, and the patriarchy is definitely toxic, the larger current cultural concept of toxic masculinity doesn't resonate with me anymore because toxicity requires a hazmat suit and a special trash can. It feels beyond repair. I need more possibility. And so I'm reframing it as problematic men and masculinity because problematic still holds hope and requires a solution. So how can we as men do a better job of listening and learning? How can we do a better job of sharing our feelings and making ourselves vulnerable with each other and society at large? How can we culturally support men when they do choose to express sentiment, sadness, and grief? Honestly, even after saying all this, I still struggle to actually believe it. In the era of Me Too, with daily reports of bad men and bad male behavior, with my father becoming more of a shitbag as he ages, and even something as simple and grotesque as sharing a restroom with dudes? What would it take for me to actually find love and forgiveness for men? I don't know, but I'm finally willing to do that work. Thanks.